I have sat across from a kid, 22 years old. He had flatlined the week before, and they Narcaned him. They brought him back to life. He was dead. They brought him back to life, and we're doing an intervention. I'm talking to him, and he agrees he needs help, but he's arguing with me, and he says, yeah, I know I died, but does it have a pool? And we think that he's insane, or we think that he's not willing, but maybe he is, but something else is driving the bus. And one of the biggest traps is we often confuse unwillingness with this, addicted to avoiding. Maybe there's something else that's driving the bus. So, just a way of looking at it. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper, help you to kind of understand this. Operating emotionally rather than rationally. I'm going to talk a little bit about avoidance coping. Avoidance coping is actually exactly what it sounds like. I cope through avoiding. Avoidance coping is a normal, natural thing that all human beings do to remain emotionally healthy. It is the things that I do to relieve stress or discomfort or whatever have you. And avoidance coping are things that I do that make my discomfort level go from a 10 or 5 or whatever it is down to a 0. My discomfort on 3 different categories: my physical discomfort, my emotional discomfort, my mental discomfort. In other words, I'm stressed. And we all have them. All human beings do them. Some of the more obvious ones are like drinking or drugs. If you use drugs right now, your stress will go down, right? Unless you use stress-causing drugs, which very few people are addicted to. I'm going to take a pill of pain. It just makes me hurt all day long. No, most people don't do that, right? Alcohol and drugs. If I had a sip of beer right now, my stress would go down. Be an interesting workshop, wouldn't it? So alcohol and drugs are some obvious one, but all people engage in avoidance coping, whether it's a glass of wine or a little bit of a drug. TV, for example. TV does a wonderful job of making my stress and anxiety go away. And when we start to look at avoidance coping through an emotional arena, spending or shopping is an interesting one. When my financial stress gets too high, I'm going to ask you a question. When I have $100 in the bank and I'm about to go broke and I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, do I, option A, look at my bills and look at where it went wrong and make some decisions and some actions how not to put myself in this position again and save some money, option A. Or option B, do I go to Best Buy, walk in that door and look at 4K televisions and curved TVs? If you answered option B, you're 100% right, because that's exactly what I do. Rationally, it makes no sense. Emotionally, it makes perfect sense. Best Buy is one of my biggest avoidance coping. And when I walk in there, my stress goes down. I have never experienced anxiety in a Best Buy as I'm sitting in front of that TV that I know, even though I can't afford it right now, if I had it, my life would be perfect. Actually, I take that back. There are times I'm agitated in Best Buy is when you decide to call me while I'm in the middle of Best Buy, which is irritating as crap, and it's like, can I call you back later? My anxiety and stress is gone. And it's just a small, simple thing, right? My thing. And what's interesting is that my avoidance coping, which is Best Buy, what works for me doesn't always work for other people, because when my wife steps foot into Best Buy, her anxiety goes way up and mine goes way down. And we have different things. My wife has some interesting avoidance coping. For example, one of hers is cleaning. She is a cleaner. When she's super stressed out, the vacuum cleaner starts going. And it's kind of insane to watch, because when she's super stressed out, I'll give you an example. Every once in a while, she'll say, you know what, it's Valentine's Day. Could we get a housekeeper to come and just clean the house for the day, because I'm just so overworked? I'll say, sure, honey. Now, the housekeeper's coming today at noon, and it is now 9 o'clock in the morning. Let me ask you, where do you think my wife is right now? Do you think she's blissfully preparing for the housekeeper, or do you think she's vacuuming the upstairs, which is insane? But it's not. It makes perfect sense emotionally. She's not cleaning the house to clean the house. She's cleaning the house because it is an avoidance coping thing that makes anxiety or discomfort go away. And it works really well for her. And there's nothing bad about it. Doesn't mean she needs to go to rehab. I hope she doesn't go to rehab, because I got a really nice house as a result of it. And cleaning is her thing. Another one, which is really fascinating, is working out. She's on the thing, you know, like yoga and like the treadmill. She loves that treadmill. Like all anxiety falls away when she's on that treadmill. You want to see my anxiety go up? Put me on a treadmill in case you haven't told. Well, it works for one, doesn't work for the other. And we all developed ours. You developed some, you have some, etc. And everybody focused on the alcohol and the drugs. But I'm going to show you how this whole thing works. How I became addicted to avoiding uncomfortable feelings, things, and situations even before the alcohol and the drugs. So gambling, exercise, pornography is a huge one. Okay, so here we go. In the beginning, all avoidance coping gives us a high degree of pleasure. And the more you practice it, whether you intend to or not, that effect will change. You will get less and less pleasure, and something else will kick in. And the something else is it will make the stress or anxiety or discomfort go away. And that becomes almost entirely what it does. So, makes it, what is it? Emotional, physical, mental discomfort. I'll show you this in action so that you really understand this. Okay, we'll start with alcohol because alcohol is a really easy one, okay? So, alcohol, I assume you've had a drink in your life, sir? I have. My brother and I, we used to be the Lee brothers, and we were the ones that threw the keg parties at our house. We were the ones with 50 people in our house in high school. We were the house you were not allowed to come to. So I'm rather familiar with I was long-haired rock and roll David, and I liked to drink. And when I drank, man, drinking made me a better person. And it really did in the beginning. I know it's controversial to say, but Cool Dave, drinking was funny. He was witty. He was popular. The person who came before Cool Dave was not so cool. I was nerdy, awkward, dorky, scrawny, unpopular, never had a girlfriend. And when I drank my first drink, all that anxiety went away, and I became a better person. And maybe I wasn't as cool as I remember, with the long hair and all that stuff, but I was definitely cooler than the one who came before. And I kissed my first girl drinking at a high school party. She had a boyfriend at the time, so it didn't go so well, but it was awesome. And I got a girlfriend, and it was funny. And in the beginning, drinking gave me a high degree of pleasure. And whether I intended to or not, the more I drank, the more socially I drank, its effects change. And I'm not talking about tolerance, I'm talking about over life, its effects will change, and it has permanently been changed for me. Have you ever been to a high school party? They're loud and high emotion, right? Everybody's like, it's like, oh my God, Jamie, you're here. You know what I mean? They're loud and the music is playing and I'm like, oh, hey, hi, right? It's high emotions, right? It's high pleasure. Pleasure is coursing through my veins and you know it. Where's David? He's on the roof about to jump for fun. You know what I mean? And whether you intend to or not, it changes. And I'm 21 years old and I'm at a club, which is still big and loud music, and we're still having a good time, but in my 20s, it changes. And the clubs are annoying, if you will. And they get smaller and smaller. And if you see right around 30, you see what kind of bars am I going to? Not the big nightclubs, kind of a sports bar, right? And now it's changed a little bit because, yes, there might be some music playing, but there are TVs along the wall. And now there's a handful of guys that have said that morning, you know what, I'm having a crappy day. You want to go have a drink after work to make it go away, right? What's it? I don't know. Just a rough day. And you see them lined up along there sipping, and their faces begin to change. They don't look like Party David having a good old time anymore. Their affect begins to change, right? And you see them watching their TV, sipping away. And in our 30s, as the bars get older, it's a different energy. And we go to kind of an old man bar. We're in our 40s or 50s. They're quieter. Sure, the jukebox is playing, but there's not a lot of chatting. It's a quieter kind of place. And the expressions are flat and bitter, and they're drinking to make it go away. What's it? Just whatever. They're becoming restless, irritable, and discontent without that drink. We're now at the local VFW or whatever, not to criticize those places. There's Old Man John at the end of the bar, just sour, right? And there's a stage after Old Man John at the bar. Old Man John at home, alone, sitting in a comfy chair. Darkened room, drinking TV on, smoking a cigarette. Don't talk to Old Man John in his comfy chair until he's at least had one or two. I want to deal with you right now. I'll be fine. And he's changed. And the expression on Old Man John is a flat affect, almost a irritation, if you will. He looks nothing like Cool Dave did when he was drinking, as pleasure coursed through his veins, right? And that's alcohol. Drugs, same thing. We'll talk about drugs. Opiates. Oh, there's a big old opiate crisis right now. If you talk to an opiate user, anybody not done, you do not look like a heroin addict. Nope. Okay, cool. If I gave you an Oxycontin or a heroin, how much pleasure do you think she would get out of that?
Probably get sick.
Okay, but the pleasurable part of it, the waves of pleasure part, how long do you think?
How long?
Yeah.
6 hours.
6 hours, awesome. Or not awesome, sorry. 6 hours of pleasure. The look on your face would just be bliss. Heroin addicts, when you talk to them, they talk about the first time. They talk about like it was like getting wrapped by an angel. Waves of pleasure and euphoria. That first time was like amazing. And whether they intend to or not, the more they practice it, they will change. And it's fascinating when you talk to a heroin addict who's been using for years and years and years. They'll say some things that don't make sense to you. They will say something like this. And it's in a rehab. They're just got into rehab, they're in detox, and they will say, oh, well, I haven't got high in 2 years. And you're like, what do you mean you haven't got high in 2 years? You're here in rehab. Didn't you get high yesterday? And like, well, yeah, I used, but I didn't get high. And you're like, what do you mean? You mean you don't get high? And they're like, no, I don't get high. I ain't been high in years. And you're like, hold up, let me get this straight. So you use a needle and stuff, right? And they're like, yeah. How much do you use? Like, they're like $50, $100. You use $100 a day, and you don't get high? No, just try not to get sick. How long is the pleasure for a heroin addict who's been using for years when he uses? How long do you think? Seconds. Interesting statement. Seconds. And we on the outside looking at it rationally like, what the F is wrong with you? A heroin addict makes the mistake of saying, and drug addicts say, I'm chasing the first high. No, you're not. You're chasing the make it go away. And the heroin addict's face and affect looks exactly like grumpy old John. Doesn't look like Cool Dave. It's this, it's gone inward. And when your son's up in the room and you don't know what the hell had happened to him, he's going inward and not outward anymore. It's changed. And it'll never go back. I was cocaine for a while. Cocaine is a cool job or a cool thing if you don't like possessions and money and stuff like that. In the beginning, cocaine, did it really get me out. And I would chat. Hey, how are you? What's going on? Let's talk about UFOs and conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I got to work on Monday. Don't worry about it. Let's take 5 days off and just party it up, right? And it changed. In the end, I wasn't talking at all. In the end, in the middle of a 5-day bender, I'm in a hotel room, paranoid, pouring sweat, and I can't talk. People try to talk to me and I can't respond. They call it getting stuck. People wonder, why did I go on a 5-day bender? Why did I sell every possession? You think that I was chasing the high. Do you want to know, in the beginning, cocaine gave me about a 6-hour, 8-hour, 24-hour, 36-hour high. In the end, a 1-minute burst of pleasure followed by 4 hours of irritation. And the next 4 hours, I will do everything possible to make it go away. Even hand my car keys to a drug dealer or sell your possessions. I've become addicted to avoiding uncomfortable feelings, things, even in my drug life. That 99% of my cocaine binge was not seeking pleasure. It was in making the uncomfortable go away. And 99% of a heroin addict's life becomes making it go away. And any of these drugs kind of make sense, like marijuana. A lot of people are like, marijuana, who gives a crap about marijuana? Nobody ever died from marijuana. I agree. I mean, I personally don't think people should get locked up for marijuana and stuff like this, controversial as that might say. I don't think it's great for somebody to ruin their whole life because they smoked a bag of weed. I do agree people don't usually beat their spouses and things like that. Alcohol's more of a dangerous drug. I agree with all that stuff. But I'm not talking about drugs as problems. I'm talking about drugs as symptoms or solutions. So when we look at marijuana, in the beginning, just like me, and I was long-haired pothead Dave, I was the Stoner Student Council president. And when I smoked weed with you, we laughed about everything. You were just funny, watching cartoons and having a good old time, and you were fascinating. And if you watch a late stage pothead, they don't laugh anymore. They kind of have that irritation, and they're smoking to make it go away. And if you doubt me, see them when they don't smoke for a day. You want to give them a joint. And now it's shifted. They're no longer smoking. They're wake and bake. I'm not criticizing. It just is what it is. So drugs and alcohol, it seems pretty obvious. Let's look at other avoidance coping, right? Television, for example. So TV, an interesting thing happened in the 50s. Parents discovered that it was easier to deal with your annoying ass by putting you in front of the TV. I don't mean to say you're annoying, but you know, all 2-year-olds kind of are at times. And mom puts you in front of that TV rather than have to deal with you. And in the beginning, you were kind of cute to watch as you watch your little cartoons, as you're giggling. Hee hee hee. Ha ha. You ever watch a 2-year-old watching? They're funny to watch. They love it. Their eyes are lit up. Watch the 5-year-old. Their affect has already began to change. And they look more like Old Man John. And it no longer gives them pleasure. It is now about making it go away. And I know this because last night my wife and I, yesterday, we spent the day binge watching some Netflix shows. I don't know, we were stressed or not stressed, it doesn't matter. But we didn't laugh. We didn't talk, we just watched. And our expressions are flat. Just like Old Man John, right? And during the break, Netflix has the break in between. I would reach over towards her hand and she reaches towards mine, but we don't hold hands. We grab our smartphones and I look at Facebook, which used to give me pleasure but doesn't anymore. And sometimes it's the first thing that I look at when I wake up and immediately think about the stressful day I have ahead, and I just don't want to deal with it right now, so I just look at CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or YouTube or Facebook. And it does a phenomenal job of making it go away, but I'm paying a price. And my wife and I are as well.